All right. Good afternoon, everybody in person and online. It's a pleasure to welcome you to today's Tubman Talk. I'm Dr. Bianca Beauchemin. I'm a member of the executive committee here at the Tubman Institute and the co-coordinator for Tubman Talks. Tubman Talks is a space and a platform to share research and publications with audiences who are doing work related to or are interested in African and African diaspora issues. The Tubman community is interdisciplinary, and we welcome a wide range of topics and backgrounds. Tubman Talks are intended to provide an opportunity for individual scholars to critically strengthen their own research by presenting it to others in the spirit of engaging in debate. Now, before I introduce our speaker today, I want to take the time to make a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of many indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is governed by the Dishwit-Wansboom Wampum Bell Covenant, an agreement to peacefully share and care for the Great Lakes region. In making this land acknowledgement, I honor and acknowledge the land and its people who have been here for thousands of years. In relation, I would be remiss not to mention the current wars and genocides happening in Gaza, Sudan, and the dire situations happening in Congo and Haiti. It is important to contextualize the repressive colonial and imperial oppressions that undergirds these current situations. Influenced personally by Black feminist politics, scholarship, praxis, and movements, I recognize that my political commitments, mandates, and solidarity are bound up and intertwined with the liberation and self-determination of indigenous people, Palestinian people, Sudanese people, Congolese, and Haitian people. Now, today, I am very excited to present Dr. Nwokolo, for his talk entitled Non-State Security Provision and Human Rights Abuses in Nigeria, Rethinking the Influences of Principles on the Agent. The talk, a little abstract about the talk today, security and policing provisions in Nigeria remain a huge challenge. Today, the country faces security challenges such as terrorism, farmer-herder conflict, banditry and armed robbery, secession struggles, kidnapping, cult clashes, and group violence across its 6 geopolitical zones. The multiplicity of these challenges seems to be overwhelming the capacity and ability of state security and forces to deal with them. Based on the existing situation, several non-state security outfits have emerged to complement the efforts of state security forces in security and policing provisioning, especially at the local community level. So we will hear more about this topic, and just a little bio of our guest today. Dr. Nwokolo is a manager and partner at Nextier and the chief executive of Nextier SPD, that is Security, Peace, and Development, a business unit under Nextier. Nextier is a multi-sectoral, multi-competency international development and consulting firm with offices in Nigeria, Liberia, the USA, and the UK. He is an honorary fellow at the School of Government, University of Birmingham in the UK since 2017, and a visiting research fellow at the Nathanson Center on Transnational Human Rights, Crime, and Security here at York University. He holds a PhD from the University of Birmingham in the political economy of natural resource conflict and advanced MA in conflict and sustainable peace studies from Katholieke University in Leuven, Belgium. He also has a master's degree in political economy and a development studies from the University of Jos, and a Bachelor of Science, in political science from the University of Nigeria. Please, everybody, welcome me in person and online to welcome Dr. Nwokolo.
So, thank you, everyone, especially to our guests who are online. So, I'm going to be talking on an issue that I've done a lot of consulting work, and I'm currently writing. I don't want to say a book, but that's what I'm thinking, because each day I'm thinking, okay, this chapter will be good. So part of why I'm here, or I felt like I should start presenting it to a lot of people, is to get that critique that the book needs before it goes out. So, sorry. So first, just like the abstract said, not just Nigeria, but most African states are currently struggling with the issue of security and policing. So this might even be linked to the way most of these states emerged. So for those of us who study social sciences, if we try to look at the nature and character of most African states, you will start understanding why it is possible that the states can no longer do their job. However, it's equally important to say that we are finding out issue of emergence of non-state actors providing security didn't start today. It has been there. And it's not only an African thing, even here in Canada. The guys you find in your local shops, in your big shops, with white and black, as security guards, are doing the work the state should be doing. But the state has, in its wisdom, said, I can't do everything. I will give this power or responsibility to a non-state actor to provide it, but under my cover to regulate their activities. And that's why you have that kind of orderly manner that if somebody shoplifts, he or she is not beaten. The person is arrested and handed over to the state police or to the country's police or whatever state institution or actor that guards or protects that thing. That is law and order. However, when you come to Africa, where the state is unable to provide that, the case is different. But let me not jump into that. However, it's equally important for us to understand that if we understand John Locke's and the urban theories, where they talked about people submitting their rights and their guns and everything to the state in turn to provide security, you will start understanding that this didn't start today. For me not to say I'll protect myself, that the state will do it for me, it means that the responsibility of providing security is the role of the state. But over the years, the state is no longer that man or woman who has the monopoly of violence. So many non-state actors have emerged, including those who come in just to make sure that out of fear, people do what they want, whom we refer to as terrorists and all that. So the control of violence is no longer the it's no longer something the state will say, I have it alone. Others have it. But where you have law and order, the case is different. Now let's go to the issue here. The issue here, we are looking at non-state provision and human rights abuse. Now we are not saying that the state or non-state actors providing is the issue. The issue there is issue of human rights violation. Now the question will be, why and how are they violating it? So if I go to the first, the first slide on my presentation, I try to say here that the issue of security provision could be likened to state-society relationships. I give you my right, you protect me. Otherwise, I could buy all the guns I need and protect myself. So you find out that it's almost like a relationship, and it didn't start today. It's almost like there was an idea where people will say, you ban me from having gun, but in turn, you will provide that it's almost like a human right for me to be protected by my state. So that is how it started. So issue of policing and security provisioning in most contemporary states is almost like the debate you have with your state, like when you go to vote. People vote in a government or voted at government based on issue of security or whatever, talk about them, migration, whatever, but it's tied to security, right? If a government in power fell in that responsibility, they will have a discussion during the next election. So most contemporary states is something to look about. Let's start with the country we're looking at today, Nigeria. Policing in Nigeria is something a lot of us who have tried to look at what is happening has more of a colonial mandate till date. So they started this way, and this is who they are today. But the issue remains that if you look at the colonial police in Nigeria and what you have now, what has really changed is just the uniform and the name from native authority, not be answerable to the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen of England, to what is today. Nothing much has changed. Rather, what you see is that the police is still central in nature, and it has continued to fail in its responsibility. In short, most Nigerians see it as almost like an occupation force. You know, the psyche and the mandate and whatever. You don't see, when even they tell you the police is your friend, you're like looking at the person, are you lying to me now? Because you don't think he's your friend, because the psychology is still there. Even the man who is policing you, who is doing the same thing, feels he's doing it on behalf of somebody, either the government in power, if it was the colonial time for the Queen. He doesn't think he's doing it for the citizen. Because that's the issue. The issue is that the police is an institution of the state, not an appendage of a government in power. And that's where the diversion comes. So, having understood what policing and security is in Nigeria, you find out that it has some structural issues, it has some fundamental issues. For instance, Nigerian constitution as of today, there's a lot of constitutional complexities in our constitution, which is Nigeria is a federation of 36 states and a federal capital, right? And it has a central police. How is that workable? If I'm a federation with 36 states federating, all the states should be able to have a state police, just like you have in the US, we have in Germany, right? The states should be able to say, okay, we have our own state police. You can have your federal police, like the FBI, which is a federal police. When you go to New York, you have the New York police. You go to wherever you have. But in Nigeria, it's not the same. You have a central police. Meanwhile, it's a federation. So that's one issue. And then you have institutional issues like corruption. If you go to Nigeria now and ask Nigerians, maybe these days they've improved in their ranking because the judiciary has taken over. They used to be number one in terms of corruption. So people will tell you the police is corrupt, bribery is an issue, and is greatly underfunded. A lot of people are saying that you can't have about 350 people policing almost 200 million. It's not possible. And this 350,000, if you remove people who are following the politically exposed persons and their families, and then maybe you have less than 150,000. So that's not enough. That's not enough. So that is an issue. Another major issue that human rights violation is on in the increase. Extrajudicial killing is on the increase. Some of you heard about the NSAS movement, and which came out of young people saying, no, you need to deform this police, reform it, is targeting us. All the promises, it never happened. Then you have operational challenges like linguistics. I'm Igbo. I speak only Igbo and English. Probably our broken English. That's 3. That's another language, so that's 3.
You're 5, you're 5.
So if you post me to a place in northern Nigeria, assuming I'm a police officer, you now send me from my state of Anambra to a place like Sokoto in the far west north of Nigeria. I don't speak the local language. How do you expect me to do my work and do it very well when I can't even understand the local language? But they still do that. So these are issues, cultural issues and so on. You know, so these are the issues affecting the police or policing in Nigeria. Now, it's important again for me to say here that in Nigerian Constitution, the state institution that is solely responsible for internal security is the Nigerian police. But over the years, new ones have come up. But we still go back to say the Nigerian police because it's still them. But you still have the other new ones who support, whom, you know, maybe because the changing nature of insecurity in the country has led to the multiplicity of these other ones. But the Nigerian police is still the big boy who controls every other thing. So when you're looking at this, the current situation in policing challenges, like I just said, has led to the emergence of these new ones, but these ones are state actors. And the problem now is that because of these new wars and, you know, new forms of insecurity, like insurgencies like terrorism, banditry, cult groups, etc., increase in population, ungoverned spaces, lack of state presence, lack of trust, it means that people are beginning to ask questions like, if the police is not able to do its work, what should we be doing? So that's the question. You find that this book I'm trying to remember, written by a professor in Princeton University, where he said in Nigeria, every family is a government. Wow. So you try to do your things yourself, which includes providing your own security. So where you live in a community, and you could go months, you've never seen a police officer. If you're attacked, it takes them like, that's if they ever come. You might start asking yourself, if they cannot provide that cover for me, or for my family, or for my community, what do we do? You go the self-help route, which is to get your own either vigilant group or whatever group to start providing that kind of security that you need. Now, how you go about it is a different thing. You could go about it employing your own security guard, how many of them that you want, and you pay them as you want. Now, the question is, people might ask, do they carry guns? Do they carry sticks? It depends on where the split leads you and how you want to do that. But the issue is that you want to provide security for yourself. And that is what the current policing challenges has led us to, that people are beginning to do this. Now, it's equally important, again, for me to say here that it's not only individuals that are doing it. The subnationals are equally doing it. The subnationals are the federating states are now forming their own vigilante groups because the centralized police is not enough to provide for the entire country. So, for instance, if I'm a governor of a state like Imo, like Lagos, like Plateau, which other states do you know in Nigeria? Like Borno and so on. And the federal police has allocated 5,000 policemen to a population of 10 million or 15 million. I'm going to ask myself as the governor, What do I do? That's not enough. Because the Constitution does not allow me to do that, I'll go to my state assembly and tell them, you know, you are going to enact a law in the state assembly allowing me to form a vigilante group of maybe 5,000 young men and give them 10 guns to start patrolling the streets. So, in terms of the nature of these non-state providers or actors, there are so many types. Maybe I might not go into them. I'll just give them one general name for this discussion. You have the ones that local communities can provide by themselves, like myself talking in my community, going for my Christmas. My village is already arranging that we need one to protect ourselves. There's one funded by the subnationals. Here we are looking at the states. There are even ones that geopolitical zones come together to fund, like the Amateku that you have in the Southwest. So it comes with so many colors, including the hunters. They have the hunter groups in northeast of Nigeria, the CJTF that are supporting the Nigerian military to fight Boko Haram. These are non-state actors, so many of them. No, but I wouldn't go into, because that would be a full day discussion if we want to go into that. So let's look at, these are the people we are looking at. You could see a picture of some of them. Now the question is, why am I picking so much interest in this? Because a lot of donors in Nigeria who I'm working with have come to understand that this has come to stay. But the question each time you ask them, they will refer to human rights violation. And that's what kept agitating my mind. Everybody is looking at the fallout, but nobody is looking at where did they fall out from. So if you see this, I picked this picture from somewhere, and it says non-state justice and security providers and security sector reform. So if we are talking about security sector reform, which was one of the programs that then FCDO funded so much in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia after the Civil War, and a lot of donor partners have picked on this and are working on this. It shows that they've come to understand that some of these African states have realized that the state is unable to do it, that the non-state will be playing an active role. But how do we get them to start conforming? How do we bring a good regulation? So these are the issues. So like I defined here, I said that these are human agents who function within the platform that perform security-related tasks without being part of the state conventional or constitutional security arm, whether or not they are given. So here, what's happening is that they are not in the Constitution. They are not recognized by the Constitution. But we have collectively recognized them and submit to them. So that's what I want to say here. So the Constitution doesn't say, I recognize them. But the Nigerian police works with them. So that means if a lawyer here is a form of recognition. So we've recognized them even though it's not part of our Constitution. Because even if you're walking in the night, they stop you. If they ask you lie down, even before they say lie down, you're already on the floor. You obey. So this is what we are seeing. So not recognized by the Constitution, but the people have come to recognize them, including the agents of the states. So you find out that they are on the rise because of Nigerians' growing social, economic, and political challenges. So as these challenges are emerging, people are looking for ways. If the government is underfunding the police because of financial issues, okay, we can afford to pay them good money, we can afford to buy cars for them, we can afford even to buy the guns they need, because they say they don't have the money. Citizens will now say, okay, maybe we can collectively put our money together and fund our own non-state actors to protect us. So you find out that as crime like banditry, terrorism are increasing in many parts of the country, people are now finding ways to survive, ways to be protected. And that's what is giving room to this. And again, as the state is becoming more fragile and more weak and getting weaker in its responsibility, people are filling those gaps because we need to protect themselves. So that's what you see. And incidentally, as these things are happening, the trust the citizens have for the police is reducing. However, the trust they have for these non-state actors are increasing. So that's what we see, especially in local communities. So if you live in a local community where you practically don't see the presence of the states, there's no light, there's no water, you do all your thing yourself, you fund everything. You could as well fund your security, you know? So that's what we see. So you find out that with this responsibility being entrusted upon them by citizens, they go extra miles, right? So for instance, if you look here, these are the kind of people we are looking at. And like I said, this is not only in Nigeria, this is across Africa. Most African states, like if you go to northern part of Ghana where you have farmer-herder clashes, you have a lot of them. Vigilant groups, people are, you know, because the state is not doing some of this. People are rising, buying guns, trying to protect themselves. So like this other one is the one you have in northwest part of the country, southwest part of the country. It's called Multi-sectoral, where 5 states have come together with a uniform platform and formed this, giving them money to provide, to fill the gap that the police is leaving. So that's what you hear. Then the question is, who do we blame for all this? Especially where people's fundamental human rights are being violated. So having thought of that, each time I try to say, no, we shouldn't just start blaming the people who have violated rights. Let's look at it from a very critical perspective and understand where is the source of the water. And that has always been my argument. And as I'm looking at that, I told myself that probably is to recognize that there's a principle here, there's an agent. And that's why I picked the principal agent theory to try to wave the discussion around it. Now, the question is, when you look at, like I said during my presentation, that the Nigerian police is the one that is recognized and is already working with them, right? So technically meaning that is the one that should, assuming that these non-state actors are recognized and are working for the interest of the state, they would have been the one to, you know, in this case, the one you give the responsibility of regulating them. But this doesn't happen. So they don't regulate them, but they work with them. Now, but then if you look at it, the next question is, if they're not working with them, if they're not regulating them, so how come this is on the increase and nobody is doing anything? Nobody is doing anything because the police who you could have held responsible for not regulating these people are doing exactly the same thing these people are doing. So if we had followed news about Nigeria, at least when I said the Nsukka, all of you recognize that, even the one that happened sometime 2 months ago on bad governance, that the police came, shot people, and if you had listened to Nigerian news 2 weeks ago, 12-year-olds were being charged for treason by the police. Brought 12-year-olds, dumped them into cell. And when they brought them to court, one of them fainted. Human rights violation. Now, if you have a principal violating human rights, how can an agent that derives his responsibility and submission to a principal be a saint? So if you're looking to who to blame, you should turn and look at the principal, not the agent. So that's the major argument about this. So you find out that the principal agent theory, the principal delegates its responsibility to an agent to execute. And you have the principal and agent looking at the responsibilities and matching each other. So what you have here is a would-be principal that violates human rights and want an agent to be clean. So that can happen. Now the agent here, the principal here could equally mean not just the Nigerian police, but the Nigerian state. Because the Nigerian state has technically accepted that non-state provisioning exists. Because if it doesn't, why is he working with them in Northeast Nigeria? So the police is working with them. So technically the Nigerian state recognizes and supports that, even though the constitution hasn't changed in any way. So having said that, now to put some figures to what I'm saying, I took this from Nigerian Human Rights Commission, which is the government-established agency that looks at human rights violations across the country and put the data together. So when you see here, you will see that this is for just a month where we looked at human violation. I think that's in April. April this year, Nigerian police had 50 human rights violations. That is the ones that were reported. The military had 13. So other state agencies, 25 and so on. But what I'm trying to show here is police had 50 just in a month of the ones that were reported. And if you go to the next slide, where I try to put from January to September, you find out that the non-state actors who are participating in this kind of security provisioning in June and May had about 2,000 and something. The state security agents had 40,293. That's if we put all of them together. So human rights violation is butter and bread. It goes on all the day. So having established this, you find out that it becomes almost impossible not to have a situation where non-state actors, like you could see here, don't violate human rights. The situation where they arrest somebody, probably the person broke into somebody's house, or they will beat the person blue, black, and then even if most times they might not even, there are places where they even kill. They do the same extrajudicial killing like the police. So that's the situation we found ourselves. And that has been one of the main issues that when we are talking about non-state provisioning in some states in Africa or like in Nigeria, it becomes very difficult for people to say, especially people who understand what's happening, to say, they're doing a good job, but we have a problem with regulation. We have a problem with human rights violation. And that's been a main issue. But my argument has always been that you can't get human rights violation right or regulation right if you do not get the principal's violation of human rights right. So that's the major argument. So based on that, and I now ask the question, who is to be blamed in all this? It goes back to my earlier argument that if the state is weak and the state institutions that should be providing this are unable to do it, what you have is a situation where human rights violation by other non-state actors will continue to increase because it becomes the order of the day. Until you get this right, you can't get the agent to be clean if the principal is not. Thank you.
You have it. Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor. This was a very illuminating talk and very interesting perspective on something that is often, you know, sort of overlooked or not looked at critically, right? And so all kinds of, ideas of just like colonial ideas of Africa sort of researched through these types of discourses. And you've given us a lot to think about to really look at the critical ways in which non-state actors have to intersect and intercept this sort of lack that is coming from the Nigerian state. Um, I do have a question I'd like to start, and then we'll pass it along. Maybe just some clarification. I know you said there were so many different sort of non-state actors that you were looking at, and you were focusing on one group, but I was wondering if you could expand on different types of non-state actors that are perhaps not necessarily grassroots or that are not necessarily there to help the community, but perhaps have more um, different types of reason of maybe helping industry or these types of things. And I'm just thinking about this through the context of like I'm Haitian, and there's all kinds of things happening with the gangs and this and that. But like, why? What kind of other reasons could non-state provisioners be using violence for? And like, if there's some kinds of clashes with the non-state actors that are trying to protect their civilians and their community, and just sort of talk about those different types of dynamics, if you could. And, yeah, this is just for the people on the Zoom. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So let's start with the fundamental ones, which are non-state security providers, but are regulated. We have such in Nigeria as well. These are the private security companies. So you can find them in the banks, just like you find them here. They don't carry guns. However, you find out that what they do and what these other ones we are looking at do are quite different. Now, for you to dive deep and understand this very well is to understand the nature and character of states in Africa. Ethnicity, where you find out that so you find out that the states and the institutions of the state are obviously I don't want to, for lack of words, I wanted to say partial, but you find out that the states tend to favor one group against the other, right? So in Nigeria, you have the farmer-herder conflict going on. Farmer clashes. So each time you say farmer-herder conflict, some people will look at you and say, why don't you use the right word, right? So you have that going on. You have banditry going on. If you go back to find out about banditry in the banditry we have now, which someone might be thinking that banditry is just about people stealing and all that, economic, whatever. But it's deeper than that, because it has morphed into a lot of things where the Fulanis are fighting the Hausas. So it's that deep. So when it started, the Hausas now have to form community vigilant groups, because the Fulani bandits were attacking their homes, stealing from them. Now remember, these are people that grew up together. It took the last 5 years for a lot of Nigerians to say, this is Hausa, this is Fulani. Apart from them, you wouldn't know, right? But it has gone that bad that a state like Sokoto could be termed to be Fulani state, if a state like Zamfara could be timed to be Hausa state, because the banditry going on has clearly shown that the ethnic division has started showing. So when this happened, the Hausas formed a vigilant group and started killing the Fulani bandits, who in turn increased their own violence, including importing other Fulanis outside Nigeria to start. And that has been the situation where we are, that northwest Nigeria is almost like a bizarre place. So communities, because of maybe land conflict, because of maybe farmer header issues, and so on, could form their own militia groups to protect themselves. So that's one aspect. If you read the history of how the hunter group started in northeast Nigeria, it started from that level of group of hunters whose community were attacked. They decided to say, come on, we have a damn gun, can't be running away from these guys. They started. And when Boko Haram started, because they knew the place very well, the state had to bring them in as part of the MJTF, multi-joint task force, to fight Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria. In southeast Nigeria, we had the Bakassi at a time that came up, and when armed robbery increased in southeast Nigeria, Abia State, and the state couldn't do anything. The governors started funding them. They were doing a lot until, and people accepted them. And people felt if you bring Bakassi, the armed robbers won't do anything. Violent armed robbery reduced. But of course, it got into the hands of politicians who started using them against their perceived political enemies and so on. And then they now became expendable, started doing what they shouldn't do until it was disbanded, right? So most times communities form this either to protect their community, right? So these are some of the things you see. And this, like I said, is across many communities in Africa, not only Nigeria.
Thank you. I think
I do have a question.
you will do, okay. And then we have some online questions. So we have one more question in person, and then Mohammed, I'll let it to you to lead in the Zoom, and I will walk around.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I do have a question and a suggestion that you might take or discard, depending on how you feel about it. So my question is basically simple. I was reflecting on the principal agent theory.
Yes.
And again, this is completely in the realm of theory. It doesn't need to make sense. So I was thinking, if you call the state the principal, speaking within the realm of theory, really, can we actually, the fact that if we refer to the security providers as non-states,
Yes.
can we regard non-state as an agent of the state? Like it, I'm trying, because the fact that we're calling them non-state in the first case already suggests that they are delinked from the state. Again, I know what you're trying to do, and it makes sense perfectly, because in reality they are not really non-state.
Yeah.
So again, I'm now questioning the label non-state.
Yes.
Because in the real sense they are agents, yes, but then calling them non-states suggests a delinking. So I want you to maybe think a little bit about that. Can we really call them non-state actors? Again, it's many things are going on in my head, but I'm sure is my question clear?
Yeah, very clear. And so I thought of it. I will tell you why. Yeah, if I could, so that others.
Okay. Do you want me to talk about the second thing that I wanted to?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll pass the.
Okay. So I was actually thinking perhaps you already have a chapter that does this already, do you have like a map? When I say map, I'm thinking in terms of network. Network theory, like the map of non-state actors, because I was thinking across multiple categories. I actually have like 4 categories that one could actually box those non-state non-state actors into. So I was thinking in terms of, okay, so at one layer, divided them into those operating within the public sector and those operating within the private sector. In terms of security providers, so those operating in the public sector, those operating in the private sector. Also at another layer, those operating at the national level, region, state, and local, because there are some non-state actors that are directly operating with the federal government at the national level, like those directly helping to address the issue of Boko Haram, for instance, and there are those that are at the local level, like the ones that communities build. And then at the third layer, I'm thinking by regulation. So those that are regulated and those that are unregulated. And then finally, in terms of their ability to use force, those that can use force and those that are just community safety providers. So those 4 layers, again, based on where you operate, public sector, private sector, and then also the scale, national, region, state, local, and then in terms of regulation, regulated or unregulated, and then in terms of force, violence, whether they have the ability to bear harms or they're just community safety guys. So those 4 layers. Again, if you've done that already, apologies, but I'm thinking that would bring some form of clarity into, because of course this topic is familiar to most people conversant with politics and security issues in Africa, but I guess for the reader, for the general reader, it would help to actually clarify the different layers of these non-state actors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me start with the second one. Yes, I thought of that and I'm doing that. We are, because they are increasing by the day, we're doing it. We are trying to, we're mapping currently mapping all of them. And that will come in there. Yes, we have those labeling and those grading, around most of them. But in terms of regulation, apart from the private security companies, which are equally non-state, right? So I'll tell you why your first question, I like it. I thought of it. I thought of the linking, but that will flaw my argument. And I'll tell you why I left it, why and how I want to connect it. So I'm currently doing that. And we'll find a way to, bring all of them under some grading and order. However, on the first one, I understand that, yeah, because when you say these are non-state, so the question is, how do I bear responsibility for somebody that is not directly linked to me? That is the question. But the question goes back to the argument of why I started with the John Locke theory. Who should provide that? Whose responsibility to provide security for me? Right? So, and if we agree on that, then let's, because in the book, if I happen to write it finally, I'm going to look at some other countries where you have similar situation. So let's take the United States. There are so many communities you get into the United States. You find out that you have the sheriffs, right? Recognized by the law. And there are even people who are within those communities that bear arms. But the good thing is that despite all that, there's a form of control and regulation. And who enforces those control and regulation? The state. And that means that each time there's a problem, you see the dot being connected. The sheriff comes out. From the sheriff, you find out that the state police, if it's a federal crime, the FBI comes out. The dot connects, right? And that's what we lack. What we lack is that the state recognizes it, but still does not want to come out to say, I take the responsibility of providing that regulation. I take the responsibility of that control. So that's what I'm trying to say, you cannot be enjoying it, working with them, but you don't want to say, these are the rules, these are the templates for them to be regulated. So I'll give you an instance. The Amateku that you see, the ones I showed from the Southwest, when they wanted to form it, they wanted it as a regional, non-state security providers for Southwest Nigeria. They wanted this as the region of Southwest. It ran into some constitutional blockage. So, because at the time, the president, the Southwest was mainly for party of the president. So they said, if you want to form it as a regional organization, it won't work, because you will not be able to back it with an act. So what they did was, all the states who wanted to have that one template, one regional security outfit, went to their own state assemblies, got their state assemblies to pass the law mandating the states to have the Amateku security outfit. But what they did was they used the same template across the 5 states that wanted to have that arrangement. Now, but this is a place where it's a bit semi-formal, right? Beyond all this now are places where, in my local community, there's none like the Amateku, and we decided to arm a group of young boys to watch while we sleep in the night. Who controls the ability to become extendable and violate people's rights, including probably somebody came to rob and they shoot and kill the person, and nobody says anything? Shouldn't the state be taking them to court? Because the question is that if it's a policeman that did the same thing, you will fight to get justice. So that's, maybe I've not been able, there might be one or two things.
Actually, you prompted another question, but that's because I was thinking, can we actually call like institutions like Amateku non-state? So do you have like a non-state actor that is sponsored by the state? Because in this case, it's a government.
That is the big constitutional question. That's the complicity. Because the Nigerian constitution does not recognize it. And that was why they went to the state assembly. And incidentally, nobody has gone to court to challenge it.
We take questions online now?
Yeah.
Okay. I had Kingsley on my list, but I think he has left. I now have Shalewa, our president. I also have myself on the list, but our director. But I will let Shalewa ask her question, and then I will ask my own.
Good evening. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I'm going to build off Damilola's question just now, and I'm guessing it's Damilola because I can't really see anybody there. And it's just the voice I'm trying to pick. But anyways, I'm building off the question about being able to call Amateku a state, because I'm guessing the definition for a state-run security agency is that it has to be federal. My knowledge of security agencies like Amateku is that they are actually funded by their state governments. And so it kind of, and especially maybe it's the semantics, or maybe it's how, it's here you would have used the word provincial government, maybe. But if we say it's non-state, then it might help to define what a state security agency is, as one that is federally run, not one that is maybe state or locally run. Because my knowledge of it is that it's actually, the states that are involved, for example, in those states, they're funding these institutions. So it's not so much, I want to say, not so much privately run security agencies as it is state-run. I would have defined it as state-run because the governments are funding this. It's just not at the federal level. So what are your thoughts on it? Is it that when you're writing the book, you're going to define and say state is just federal, because this is still another arm of government that is running these institutions? So.
Thank you. So I can go and answer this, right?
Yes, please.
So, thank you. I think what you've done was to help me answer the last question, But the interesting thing here is, when we say non-state, maybe it will come in the definition now. So we are looking at, because the Nigerian Constitution, we are looking at the Nigerian Constitution here, which obviously does not provide for any other person, any other security actor in terms of policing except the Nigerian police, and probably the defense corps that came and all that. So every other person who is doing that is seen as non-state. Now, because the question is that, because the research we were doing, part of the work that led to the idea I'm trying to was funded by a German think tank, and when we went to some of the states, we find out that even the funding is not written anywhere in the paper. So if we want to go that deep, the funding for the Amateku is not anywhere. It wasn't passed in any of the state assemblies. It comes from the security vote, which is really unconstitutional. So everything around it is ruled in secrecy. Not only Amateku, all of them across the country. They are at the beck and call of the governor, what he decides to do. So maybe when I'm, just like what the mother said, when I'm doing the classification, that is where, whether I'm going to say they are semi-formal or semi-state, I don't know what I'm going to call it.
We need a new definition for non-state.
Exactly, because the governor wakes up and now say, I need 10,000 young men, sew clothes and give to them.
I mean, they are also, sorry to interrupt. Okay, maybe Shalewa first.
No, sorry. So no, because by that definition, if you say they are the beck and call of the governors, can it not be argued? And oh God, this thing is being recorded. Can it? Can it not be argued that it's the same thing as the Nigerian police force, because they're usually at the beck and call of the governors or any wealthy person who can afford them, even though they're supposed to be federally, they're under the federal constitution. So how
that is helping my theory of principle and agent, because that's my first argument, that if you want to solve this, you need to go to the source.
I think there is a thought, and I don't think Mohammed has asked his question yet.
Okay.
But I think there is a thought. Sorry, Mohammed, I'm really sorry. I think there's a third dimension to this, though, that I'm not sure whether you've considered it. So I'm thinking as a Nigerian now, and before I was asking a general academic question that anyone could have asked, but now I'm thinking I'm going back to Osun State, which is my state of origin in Nigeria, a state in which I've lived and I still go to all the time. And I'm also thinking about the past Minister of Interior, who was the former governor of that state, who set up a general tax collection vanguard. just general tax collection vanguard called, I think, I'm not sure whether it's OES or yes or whatever. But then this general tax collection vanguard also then have these men that constitute the vanguard also have the responsibility of enforcing, like providing security and enforcing, like more like enforcement. So like arresting people, and I see that across all of the entire country, including the government using NURCW and other kind of actors as enforcement agents, like to enforce some kind of laws. So basically, if you, for instance, if you default in taxes, normally you're supposed to maybe prosecuted and arrested, but then using a non-state actor to enforce something that a proper state actor should have done. So I'm not sure how to.
Okay, so as you were talking, you know what flashed through my mind immediately? The question there is the question of legality.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So, and that's why my use of non-state. It's not that I don't know that the subnationals are contributing money. But if a policeman works with them, but still will tell you that the law does not recognize them, then they are not non-state. Right? So if a governor, I will give you an instance. Which of the states now where the PDP and the APC are fighting, so that I will use where, let me take Rivers State. Let me use Rivers State. When Governor Wike, well, he sits here and there. So when Governor Wike was the alpha and omega in PDP, you know, he formed one in Rivers State. And the state police, he was directed, the then IG, of course, directed by the president, asked that they go and arrest all the neighborhood watch formed by Wike. Because the Nigerian constitution does not recognize it, even though the Rivers State government, through the state assembly, made that law. So if we have a constitution that says we can do state police, so technically these are state police, right?
Yeah.
But the constitution does not recognize it. So the governors cannot say, I formed the state police. But they are funding it the way you could fund anything. So what is happening here is not that we don't know that the state government are putting money. So because of that, we can call it non-state. But the question is that in terms of legality, it's not recognized by the law. So that's why it's non-state. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
It's cover, right?
Doctor, I have to run, but I'm on the committee. I just want to thank you for being here. It's been very enlightening, especially for an undergraduate student like myself. Just a quick question, and excuse my ignorance. Is there any repercussions for non-state actors for human rights violations at all? Either from government, international committees, UN? Does that, I'm not hearing any of that in the talk. So does that happen like zero or no culpability whatsoever?
The violations they go on every time. So it depends on was it reported, what action was taken, and all that. So if a situation where is probably ethnic groups are fighting, and the other ethnic groups, using the vigilante group, kill people, whatever, it could get reported, but at the end of the day, what happened? What actions we are taking?
Thank you.
Welcome.
I think we can
Mohammed.
go online.
Yes, Kingsley is back, but I will ask my question, make my comment first, and then Kingsley. First of all, Dr. Nwokolo, thank you for your paper. It's a very promising project, and I know a few scholars who are very interested in this phenomenon, and I would even want to invite you to engage the scholarly community with this work. One place that would be good for you to do this is to come to our Canadian African Studies Conference that is going to be held in June 2005. I want to invite you to come to that conference to have an opportunity to get others to engage your work. I also want to mention two scholars that have been looking at this issue for a while now. The one is Bruce Baker. He has published extensively on informal and non-state security actors in Africa. And the other scholar is Kate Meager. She focuses her work on Cameroon and I think also Nigeria. Now my questions. I have two questions and they're going to continue the conversation you've been having with my colleagues over there. The first one is conceptual. I notice you are using non-state and informal interchangeably. I think it would be helpful to get some conceptual clarity between those two, because one could argue that the state actor can be providing security through informal means, and the non-state actors can be providing security through formal means. So I think you need to do a little bit more work to clearly define those concepts and then decide which one you want to use consistently. I think it will help with the analytical utility of those concepts. So that would be my first comment slash question. Do you think that these are overlapping terms or they have different analytical utility, and which one would you want to use consistently? The non-state and the informal actor concept. The second question is theoretical. I agree with Damilola and others. I think you also want to think a little bit more about the usefulness of the principal agent theory. And the reason why I am making this point is that I would want to problematize whether the state is always the principal. And it's maybe because you are looking at the case in Nigeria, but I would argue that there are so many other cases in Africa where the state itself does not have the capacity, does not have the trust, does not have what it takes to be considered as the principal. And there are so many actors that are operating outside that principal agent relations you're talking about. So I guess my question is, if you are using this principal state theory, don't you think that there are other dynamics that are going on? And for example, in the context of war-torn countries, in a country like Somalia, where the state itself does not exist, how would you be able to capture the activities of other actors that are providing security in those contexts? Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for, I know Bruce, that's Coventry University. I think been with him a couple of times. I think he does more on policing in Africa and all that. And yes, using either non-state or informal, probably in the nature of the work, most times you find out because of the overlapping nature of what they do, you end up doing that. But because I'm looking at a book, if I start it, I'm going to look at different dimensions to what I want to do. So now I'm looking at a holistic idea, which I'm still going to break down into chapters where I look at issues, of which one of them, this what I'm looking at now, might just be a chapter. So when I look at countries where, like Somalia, you mentioned, I'm likely not going to apply the theory because it won't work. I can only apply the theory where you have a functional state, whether it's weak, whether it's decaying, whether it's dying. And these days we have so many types of states. So let it just be that there's a presence of a state. Then I want to use that.
Thank you. We have two people who want to ask question, Kingsley and then Musa.
Hello, good evening from Nigeria. And Ndubuisi, very interesting presentation. I'm not an academic, so please forgive me if I don't ask the question in the way that it is thrust here. But there were two situations I wanted to seek clarity on because they were not mentioned as much given the environment here. The first one is the question of the evolution of legitimacy of some of these entities. You know, in some cases, they have started off on a high because, I mean, even with the principal agent theory, the principle of these agents also has a principle, which are the people, and the legitimacy, you know, formally or informally is conferred upon them by those people they serve. So, you know, do you see or have you seen patterns of shifting legitimacy over time or shifting approval of their work, which affects the legitimacy? And how does that then speak about the sustainability of these environments? So that's the first question. The second question for me is a model also that I had not heard you speak about, but which was somewhat touched on, which is the corporatization of, you know, some of these non-state actors. And the case in point I wanted to speak about, which you know, is Tantita, which, you know, is basically an evolution from a militant group to a sort of security group to now a security company given maritime security, whose client is the federal government, not the non-state, sorry, not the subnationals. So in those two situations, you know, how do they fit into the model that you're trying to present here? Thanks.
Thank you, Musa. Okay, let's start with the second one. The issue of Tantita, which used to be a militant group, and we have now given them this mouth-watering contract to be protecting Nigerian pipelines, right? Okay. So the case of Tantita is not obviously what we're looking at because Tantita is registered in Corporate Affairs Commission. Even though my last check on them shows that they've not registered with Nigerian Security Corps, that's Civil Defense, who are supposed to be regulating them. But that's a different kettle of fish. Now, Tantita as a company is a private security company. So we are not looking at private security companies because private security companies in Nigeria are regulated. So that's why if there are issues of human rights violation, you can sue them. For the fact that someone even, I've seen a case where one guy was something happened in a bank and he was beat up by a security company, a private security guard in a bank. I saw what the bank manager did that day, you know, just for the news not to get out because it's an image problem for the bank and then for the security company. That's equally some kind of ownership to show that private security companies are regulated and they have to operate under a certain regulation. So Tantita is like them. So if there are issues of human rights violation, it's traceable, it's addressable. So it's different. So, but when we're looking at the second question where you equally brought in an argument of that even the principal here is the people, which obviously if we look at the way things should be, that's what it is. And that's why situation where a government does not deliver, in the next election, you vote them out. So the people are even the principal on top. But if you look at it in what we are looking at here, you find out that where communities now are even regarded as a principal, right? If we regard the communities here even as a principal. And that's why you find out that in some communities, they've even given that kind of nod to these non-state actors to operate because they have nowhere to go. So if they've given them that nod, that means you still have that 3 levels of principal or 3-level chain relationship. the people in the community, the state police or whatever police that does not exist, and then these non-state actors. But I mean, what Musa raised here, which is cogent here, is all this whole thing is about issue of regulation, is about issue of formality, right? So, and because if they are properly addressed by the Constitution, it becomes easier to start looking at the loopholes and start closing them up. But if you acknowledge that it does exist, but the Constitution does not acknowledge it, it's not there in the Constitution, then I think it's a big issue.
I think
we have Kingsley back, but maybe after Professor Bauer.
Yeah, thank you so much for the talk. My question is, I don't know how to place this question. So you are looking at issues of human rights violations. And so my question to you is, were the police ever not commissioned to violate human rights? I mean, you looked at the evolution of the police as from, the colonial days, when we know that initially that's the point, was to violate our rights or to violate the rights of the colonized people. And so if we are tracing that evolution, I don't see much change de facto in terms of their role. So if, in fact, they were always there to violate our rights, under what circumstances are you looking at their mandate differently? As in, are you, revising their mandate? I hope you're getting the question. So my question is, well, I don't know if you're going to do this in the book, but to also wrestle with that their mandate, to me, if we are tracing their evolution, was never really to violate, was never really to protect our rights or to guarantee them. It was to suppress them, to ensure that colonial rule persisted. And now, under the colonial, de facto colonial state that we have continuing, has anything changed, really, in terms of the work that we have seen them do? So when we go back to the principle itself, so we have those underlying issues. So I'm just I know that you're looking at it constitutionally in terms of what their role is, but de facto, what have they been doing historically and what has changed? You may not have to answer it now, but I think it will be an interesting debate to get into.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I understand your argument, which maybe it didn't come out very well, or because I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to look at a lot of things. So this might fall where I'm looking at the relationship between the police and the non-state actors here. Now, I'm looking at the relationship in the sense that they try to mimic the police, right? Yeah. They try to mimic the police. So it's like if you laugh in a certain way, your child who is watching you is likely going to be laughing the same way, right? So that's what I'm trying to look at. Because this actually came out from some of the push by development partners in Nigeria or across most African states who are saying, we understand that these have come to stay, but we really don't know what to do. They don't want to say, but the problem is your police, right? But I am saying the problem is, let's even start from where the problem is. Probably if there'll be a lot of training for the police, but they never change, right? So probably if we start looking at it from a holistic point, where we say policing has an issue, police as an institution has an issue, if it cannot do well, whoever is regulating is likely to be even worse than him. So that's what probably by the time I try to iron it out very well, I'll be able to straighten
it. Kingsley, you want to try to ask your question again?
Yes, I am going to be quick. Thank you, Dr. Ndu, for the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Luckily for me, the last speaker has asked one of the questions I intended to raise, the issue of the fundamental philosophy of policing in Africa. So I think she did justice to that. Then let me quickly ask my second question based on my experience in the field, recent experience. Using the Nigerian police force as a case study in Africa, it does appear that we do not have police. There is deficit of public trust in the Nigerian police. So how can we manage this? I say this because since March, probably the presenter is aware, the international alert has been in the field, and I happen to be one of the researchers, and we've been looking at policing and public trust. From the field, it's amazing that the people do not trust the police. The police themselves know that they are not trusted. So it seems that the relationship between the people and the police has broken down. What can we do? What does the presenter intend to suggest as a solution to actually having a functional policing system in Nigeria? Thank you.
Kingsley, you want me to fix all the problem in Nigeria, eh? I think this is huge, right? Well, I think there are a lot of structural issues and constitutional issues about fixing the problem of policing in Nigeria. And like I said, if we, and just like what Silva said there, policing in Africa, especially because I still see them as colonial police, came as part of occupation force, and that hasn't left them. Kingsley, I don't know if you know, but check the police training manual. If you look at it, nothing has changed over the years. Most of them were copy and paste. Nothing fundamental has changed. So
exactly,
there was a work I did for UNDP Chad on post-conflict policing, where I was looking at policing styles across the world. Nigeria is still using traditional policing. So they will tell you they want to do community policing, but they're still doing the traditional policing style, which a lot of countries have left. So to change that will involve a lot, both the training, both the kind of people you want to draft into the police and so on. And again, the question again is, an institution cannot be better than the people that forms the institution. So Nigeria as a people and Nigeria as a country has equally some fundamental issues. Probably if we start getting those things right, it will rub on the police. Produce more good people, they will out of the society, get into the institution and try to change a lot of things. So I might ask the question, why are we not picking the best to be in our police? Why would uncles and aunties and sisters and brothers send referral for people to get into the police? I have a friend in the UK who is a 4th generation police officer. As in, his son is already saying that he wants to be a policeman. He wears the police uniform with pride. Every guy who got into Nigerian police maybe did it because he didn't find any other job, or because he has been asked to go in there to represent a quota. You know? So, or because he's waiting to when he becomes a big person in police and then he makes it. So there are a lot of fundamental issues. And if we start fixing those things, probably we can have a good police institution. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we are at the end of our talk today. Everybody, actually, before I thank our presenters, I want to thank everybody who asked a question. We had a quite lively discussion here, and this is what Tubman Talks is all about. So give yourself a big round of applause. And now give Dr. Nwokolo a big round of applause for his discussion today. Thank you so much for being here with us. We are, this was our second Tubman Talk of the year. We have another one next week with Keisha Bell Kovac, who is going to be presenting her talk, Looking Back, Moving Forward, Archie Eleye and Black Placemaking. That's next week, November 21st from 3 to 4:30. And if you're jealous of the fun time that we have here in person, I encourage you to come through and come have some coffee and lively discussions in person if you can. If not, the talk will also be hybrid and you can join us via Zoom. Thank you, everybody, again, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.